Wicked. Now, 164 million worldwide so far, and it still hasn't even opened in places like France and certain countries. So that's crazy. I'd love to get the conversation going on everything you liked, didn't like, or maybe it surpassed your expectations. What did you guys think about this film in general?
I went into it hearing all the wonderful things, but I still was cautious because I love the musical. Like, listened to the music all growing up, and then I saw it on Broadway. I saw it came to TPAC in Nashville last year, and I saw it again, and one of my favorite shows. And so I was like, they're going to ruin it. Like, there's no way this can be good. And it well surpassed my expectations. Like, so many people told me, no, it's even better than the musical. And I didn't want to believe them, but I would agree. It was pretty damn incredible.
For me, this is like a long time coming. When I heard that the director's been trying to make it for a while, I thought it would be in good hands. Of course, you know, we've been seeing teasers and trailers for it for a year plus, more or less. We knew about it coming out, the adaptation of it. You know, my wife is the big Wizard of Oz fan, and then her favorite musical. All my kids have seen it, so it's like, you better come correct. Whatever you do with this movie, it better be correct. So I didn't do too much of the behind the scenes research like I normally would. I wanted to go into it as, dare I say, blind as possible. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was a solid movie. I mean, every movie you could nitpick and criticize little things about, but I think it was just a day or two, because a lot of my friends who were critics saw it as late as Sunday before it premiered. And then we went to early access on Wednesday to see it. And when I heard it was part one, I said, okay, so they're going to break it up based on when intermission would be for, you know, like the musical. And I wanted to see if it would be true to the musical and also true to the book. And it did in both ways. So it was great to hear all the songs plus a few, and, you know, it was solid. It was solid for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a question to both of you quickly before we talk about other things. Was there any new songs in this? I literally recently saw Wicked again on Broadway for my birthday. I hadn't seen it since I was 18. And I traditionally, a lot of times when these movies are adapted, they like to throw in a new song to get like a potential best song nomination at the Oscars. I didn't notice anything that was necessarily different. Did you guys?
I noticed that they added lyrics.
Yeah.
Like, I noticed some of the songs changed a little. I don't think there was an entirely new song, was there?
I don't think so.
No.
But
I wonder if adding lyrics makes it qualified then at that point. I don't know.
Let's see.
Yeah. It was definitely like slightly darker than the musical. Even like in Defying Gravity, they add like a kill her line. I don't remember that being in the like musical adaptation. It seemed mildly darker for sure. Not as dark as the book, but dark.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard the book is incredibly adult, first of all, and then also just very dark compared to the show.
Yeah, it's real grim.
Did you guys notice any things they incorporated from the book specifically?
The beginning. The beginning has more of the book incorporated, which is good because it kind of, you know, like everything else, I call it the Shining effect. You have people who like the book adaptation, then you have people who like the movie adaptation, then you have that small Venn diagram of people who are in the middle between the two. So I think there was service given to both, you know. So you, like you were saying, there's a little bit of a dark element from the musical to the movie, but it also played a little more into the book. Not totally, because if you thought 2 hours and 40 minutes was long, if you played an entire book as a 2-part movie, it would definitely be a lot longer. So I think that's where they kind of added to it.
Yeah, but the book doesn't focus nearly as heavily on the friendship, and has way more like political aspects to it and religious aspects to it, and that doesn't really come into play as much. It's definitely political, but not to the degree of the book.
Yeah, I found out recently. So initially, when Wicked came to Broadway, Kristen Chenoweth's role was supposed to be much, much, much smaller. And they wanted her to sign on for it. And she was like, I guess, trying to have her own sitcom at the time, because everyone's tried that at least once. And they kind of coerced her to be a part of it. And then they kind of really had her co-collaborate creating that character. So that's definitely why, since you pointed out that their friendship is not really a focus of the book, that's really what they amplified in the Broadway show, which I found very interesting. And initially they had written like the No One Mourns the Wicked to be more of like a deeper alto, but because Kristen has that crazy soprano range, they were like, let's use that as a contrast. So it's like this really high up voice singing this really sad stuff. And I think it works so well. I thought like they definitely elevated certain numbers in a much bigger way. One that stood out to me was Dancing Through Life. I find that like in the musical, it's great. It's a great number, but in this, it was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was the dancing with it. Like, I mean, obviously a lot of the things that happen in the movie, you can't do in a play, like just realistically. And so the pieces with the library and how everything's moving, it was so incredible. And then even like the dance scene in general, when Elphaba comes in, like, I feel like I was sobbing just nonstop through that whole piece.
Anything that you find, KB, that they potentially improved upon, or maybe could have improved upon more, because you know a lot about both the book and the musical?
I think the including the backstory more, I always thought that was what was missing from the musical.
Yeah. So
to address that upfront, without giving anything away, we're going to see more of it open up in part 2. I think that was a good play, because then it ties it more into what people know, whether they've seen the musical, read the book or not. You have the whole Wizard of Oz element in it that's going to kind of tie things together more. So it just opens it up to be of service to more of a general audience, without saying you have to read the book or you have to see the musical to enjoy this. I recommended it to someone who's only seen The Wizard of Oz, doesn't like musicals, and went in to see it. And at 5:20 in the morning, I got a text saying, "Loved Wicked." That's all it said. And I was like, okay, my job here is done. Someone who doesn't like musicals, much more movie musicals, went and saw it and totally loved it. So
it's a very interesting thing with the musical genre, because I feel like, there's only, back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, if there was a hit on Broadway, they would adapt it immediately to be a film. And there are some great ones. And then we kind of got out of that. And then, Chicago was finally adapted. And I personally think in a lot of ways, the film is better than the musical, which is very hard to pull off. But I feel like it can take like seeing a musical once, twice, maybe 3 times, and if they're bad, you are like, I hate musicals. And I can see why it's such a hard genre for people to get into,
Yeah.
Yeah.
My thing is, I grew up, I went from my mom taking me to Broadway and off-Broadway plays and musicals to becoming an adult and going with my wife. It was like going to TK, TS, and getting like matinees and stuff like that, to my kids wanting to, anytime we're in New York, oh, I want to go see that, or they would take school trips and they would end up going to see stuff. And I'm like, I didn't even see that. And so it's like just having that as a part of growing up. And I grew up like in the time of Grease and, like you mentioned, years later, Chicago and all that. So just having that kind of like be a part of my art DNA. It's weird when I hear people say, no, I don't like that. It's like, so West Side Story, not a good movie to you? Or, you know, it's so weird for me to hear that, but, you know, to each their own. So to see something like this be a hit, it's like, yeah, I'm used to that because I've seen other musicals do it. And, you know, once November, December rolls around, we start to think about award season. So this is definitely going to be there for award season, as far as, you know, how many nominees it gets for this award or that award. So it's inevitable.
I think the timing of it too, just like post-election and how much it says politically without being obnoxious. Like, I think it's integral to the story of the play, and it's done with such, I mean, it was before all the like, we need to make everything woke and put everything in that's has a political agenda. It was before all that this story was created, but it comes out at a time where we need it done well. And I feel like that's, I mean, there's so many videos on TikTok about Wicked and like how it's coming at this perfect time in a political season. And I think that's very real and how it's driving people to really appreciate it too.
Yeah, I think in a time where people of all sides of the spectrum distrust their government the most, I think that this is a general thing, a general kind of look into like a mirror of anyone can relate to, what regardless of what their politics are, because there is so much distrust amongst everyone. And I think that like the fact that the wizard is this political figure that people are now not trusting, and you see how he manipulates people, I think it says so much, and it won't drive people away on either end of the political spectrum.
Yeah. I also wanted to say too, like, I really appreciated, and it's been a year, which I realize isn't that long, but my memory is horrible since I've seen the musical. But I feel like Nessa's character is much more full in this version. Movie. And like, man, you hate her. Like, and they do such a good job of making her this, like, I'm a victim, woe is me, and you hate her for having no empathy for her sister who's gone through all this trauma. And I love that aspect of it.
It almost plays like in service to her when the need be. And then otherwise it's like, I'm independent, leave me alone. It's like, we have a future coming for you that involves a house. Just know that.
Facts. Spoilers, but real.
And to piggyback off of that, I think what you guys were saying about the expansion and like the opening, I think the stuff with the dad really hits it hard in a great way in this film, because you get like, that's one of the things I keep thinking too. It's like, there's no way you could do one film for this show, because the show itself, I think one of my critiques of the show is that it rushes through things so quickly. And this is like, we can really like just live in this world and get to know these characters. And I think the dad being so harsh on Elphaba and his favorite little girl, Nessa, I mean, my goodness, like that. And she's taking it so like maturely, and she kind of just is like, I know like Nessa's my dad's favorite and my dad hates me, and I'm just still going to protect Nessa because that's my sister and I care about her, you know?
Yeah, you don't really see that as much in the musical. It's kind of implied. And that's the difference. You know, we talk about opening up. When you have a book adaptation and you open it up to a musical, there's just so much you could fit in. So you take something like Alice Walker's The Color Purple, and you have the Spielberg movie, which tried to play as close to the best with Walker's work in a 2-hour movie. And it's much more open up than the musical became, because the musical really didn't have a chance within that limited space of time. And you see the same thing here, where, I mean, the musical is excellent, but you have more of character development being shown in the movie with more time given, because by the end of this, we'll have what, 5 hours, 4.5 hours worth of music and character development and plot and, you know, things just moving along, because it almost feels like we just got to the end of Act One with this, not only in terms of the musical, but also in the tone of like a 3-act plot. So we'll see what the part 2 brings as far as Act 2 and Act 3 of it.
Yeah, I was really nervous about them splitting it into 2 parts, but now after seeing the first one, I was like, oh, this was completely necessary.
Yeah. I love the running joke too. That's like, because it stops at when intermission would begin, and it's like, oh, I have plenty of time to stretch my legs and get concessions because we have a year.
Yeah, a whole
Right?
year.
Yeah,
So
you can use the restroom. And what did you guys think about the casting of this? Because I really think that I personally think they did a really great job with everyone. Any thoughts on the choices for the cast?
Yeah, there wasn't any choice that I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like everything, I loved Piero. Like, oh my goodness. And I think a lot of us were nervous with the whole, like, when the fan adapted the poster and Cynthia kind of had her freak out over it. And I think a lot of us were like, oh no. But I think the casting was 100% perfect.
Sorry about the background, but for me, I think I initially, which I try to avoid being a prisoner of the moment, but on my Letterboxd, I just gave it 5 stars because to me, it was everything that I look for in a movie was done well. If I had critiques, that didn't take away from the 5 stars. But as far as casting, sometimes an actor might mail it in, and that could be based on the writing or just who they are. And for me, Jeff Goldblum felt like he was just doing Jeff Goldblum. He wasn't the wizard. He was just Jeff Goldblum in it. So I think that would be my only critique, but everyone else was well casted, played their parts well. I think taking someone who was a Broadway actress in Cynthia and giving her the role, and taking a pop artist who has lyrical range in Ariana Grande and giving her a role was very, very smart, because could hit those high notes, has that pop appeal, kind of like Glinda would want to be.
Yeah.
So it just made them attractive in that sense. And honestly, even though we've had movies besides the Broadway career, even though we've had movies like, oh my gosh, what was that one I saw with Cynthia Erivo? Harriet. So even though she's had roles like that with really powerful performances, I would say not everyone, she's not a household name.
No.
In the same sense. So once again, that plays to the character. So, and then everyone else was excellent as well. I forget the guy's name on the right, but he was perfectly cast.
Yeah. And just as we were saying, they expand on things. I found that the Bach-Nessa relationship too, like seeing him, like his reactions to what were going on when his face is like right there, big on the screen, is so much more impactful than when you see it in the show. You know, it's a very interesting, complicated dynamic, because he's clearly so in love with Glinda. but he wants to impress her and be with Nessa, and then like he's so conflicted in that, and then it just obviously blows up in their face in Act 2. But like a lot of these things, I think, you guys were pointing out, it is so great to be able to see the depth of these characters on screen. And I agree. I think Cynthia Erivo like blew me away in a way that it wasn't that I was ever skeptical, because I know she's so incredibly talented, but it was kind of like, what is she going to do with Elphaba? And I thought she just nailed every emotional beat. I mean, I immediately cared for her instantly. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, especially when you do have the slight drama that did happen with her, and she overreacted, and she said she overreacted and things like that about the fan poster. I completely forgot, did not care, and I just saw how incredible she was in this, and I'm just like, she can go off about anything she wants on Twitter, because it doesn't even affect me because of how powerful she is on the screen. So great cast. I'm so excited for Act 2. I think people that it's really interesting when you talk to people that they know nothing about the musical at all, and they don't know what's about to happen. And one of the critiques I keep seeing from people that never saw the show is that they felt like the side characters felt shallow, and to us we're like, oh no, they were so much more explored than the musical. So, and they don't know obviously what they're going to do in Act 2. So I think that once they see Act 2, it might have, in retrospect, like change their opinion about this movie with those critiques.
Yeah, I'd agree. I do. It makes me want to, like, anytime I watch something I love, it makes me want to watch it with people who know nothing and just like stare at them the whole time and watch their reactions.
I do the same thing. I was telling this story that I took a Hitchcock class, a film class, a couple summers ago, and besides my now friend and myself, no one in the class had totally seen Psycho. They knew about the shower scene, but they had never seen Psycho on a whole. And when it got to the part, we stopped watching the screen and we started looking at the other students in class just to see their reaction. And we're talking about a movie at the time was, 50 years old? Mm-hmm. And the way the blood rushed out of their face, they've seen, decapitations and all kind of modern horror movies, but just the fear in their face, it was like,
right.
Just watching them. It was great. It was so great. So I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm. I think we're all, as people that are familiar with the material, I think we're all thrilled that people can finally see it. And I think one of the biggest issues with Broadway in general, I mean, national tours help, but the national tours are still expensive. And I think there is such a divide. I mean, I wish I could. I live in New York, and I wish I could afford to go to Broadway all the time. And there's no way that's happening. I usually do the lottery or the cheapest tickets I can find. And I think that's, as we were talking about earlier, like that was kind of the purpose in the 40s, 50s, and 60s to instantly adapt a hit. And we had to wait 25 years for this. So I'm happy that the world can now experience this film and everything about it. Just going to hit the chat real quick. We've got, and I'm probably going to miss a lot of people because we're talking so much, but I apologize. You are very appreciated that you're here. We've got Cody from Dude Who Loves Movies. Roundhouse, kick that like button. Yes, thank you. And he says, I can't wait to check out Wicked. Absolutely. Definitely do it soon. Luke Ponto, what's up, y'all? Thanks for stopping by. Smile 2 had psychoactive suspense at times. Says Cynthia Erivo nails her performance, the acting, the singing, the ceiling hitting highs that she involved with near the very end, everything. The end sequence. And someone pointed this out, that the way John Chu directed it was almost like a superhero film, in the sense of like the very end, and like when she rises into the sky and all of the quick things that are happening, and it's just like there's so much tension and drama. Really, really well done. Max says Wicked seriously blew me away. I had a 10 p.m. showing and it was packed to the brim. That's actually something I'd like to ask you guys. How were your experiences in the theater?
I was like, I got the last seat for the showing I went to.
Wow.
Luckily, it was back far enough.
Oh, good. It wasn't
Mhm.
right in the front.
No, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people went together, and I last minute was like, I'm not waiting for my friend anymore. Like, I'm going alone. And I went, and I mean, the crowd was so excited. There was so much clapping, and just like the last scene, everybody was in tears, and like nobody moved when it ended. And I love that.
I'm in Kansas City, and AMC is based here, and they're probably the only franchise theater right now that has I call it the no singing policy, but it's like no talking, no whatever, and that includes singing. So I said, at least for the first time, I want to see it that way. And there was an early access screening, so it was a sold out thing, but we got the tickets early enough, and I think there were like 10 of us in a row. So we were like dead center where I like to be, and it was in Dolby and all that stuff. So I got like the full experience. But now I'm ready to see it again, and I want to be in the theater where people are just belting out everything. But yeah, every show, like I checked for Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, even though I wasn't going, every show was just packed and sold out.
Yeah, I loved that. There was a lot of applause, almost like you were at the theater, like after numbers. I mean, people were applauding, and people were crying all over the place. And a lot of times, you know, a lot of people felt, you know, they were so overwhelmed with the fact that they were actually watching a Wicked movie on screen. And I think that just brought people like tears to people's eyes too, because it was like, I can't believe it's finally here, you know? So what a special thing to be a part of. So we're gonna, unless you guys want to say anything else about Wicked, you're more than welcome to. If not, we are going to move on to our little own rent trash game.
I just want to mention quickly, like, what are your thoughts? Because I love celebrity drama. What are your thoughts on like the references to how Judy Garland had to go through all this stuff, and like they made her wear a corset and take all these caffeine pills, and it was such a stressful environment, and like the marked like weight loss and changes in appearance of the two main actors in Wicked. Like I don't know what to think, and I hate when people just focus on how women's appearances are in movies and before and after, but like I did notice just how almost like sick they look in some of the post interviews, and like all the crying. People are saying, is this trauma, or is this just acting is stressful in general? Like, this is just how it is.
I mean, I would say the thing with Ariana Grande being incredibly skinny right now. I mean, people were, when they first saw on-set photos, they commented on how tiny she was. I personally thought that because her costumes, she knew were going to be very voluminous and very. I think most people in that circumstance, it's kind of like when a bride like tries to lose weight for a wedding. I think knowing that she probably just wanted to be in the best like physical like moment so that she wouldn't look frumpy, I guess, because those are like big gowns and there's a lot of volume to those. And if, you know, it can show a lot, it can make someone maybe not look the most flattering. I feel like with the crying and all that, I feel like maybe they just feel so bonded from what they went through with this experience. And this movie is so important to so many people. And maybe it's just emotional for them now that it's finally out, because I feel like they had to not talk about it for so long. The pandemic happened and like all this stuff. And maybe that's the cause of that. But
yeah, keep in mind, they didn't just make a movie together. They essentially shot back-to-back 2 movies. You know, if there's any bonding to be made, it's going to happen over time. Whether it's the Marvel movies or like the Lord of the Rings, any franchise of movies, you find out about these bonds and these friendships that get made among the cast and the crew, and it just goes on for years and years. For me, it was past all of that, and it was more to also say they're not very tall or large women to begin with.
Yeah.
There is that picture from the premiere, and they had the 2 stars of the original musical. They had Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, and then these 2 ladies. And the tallest one in the picture was Adina Menzel, and she's
Yeah.
5'4".
Wow.
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
So she's 5'4", and everyone else in the picture is mad shorter than her.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
You're not going to expect them to be size 16.
Right.
So,
Right.
Right.
you know,
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on it. I just have
Mhm.
noticed that this has been such a topic, and like I do love the drama of everybody's
sad that it's a
conspiracy
topic.
theories and like yeah.
and it's always the topic with women, and I
Right.
hate that.
Mhm.